Hello, everyone. I am getting set up here for our February Lifeonaire Foundations call. As most of you who have joined me in the past, you will know that I typically do this via a teleseminar, and I have a good number of people who join me on the phone line. I am actually working on getting that set up right now as I prepare for this call, just to make sure we have that going and that we can get that recording in place for those who need to come back and listen to this or participate another time. So I will get that recording going here in just a moment and we'll get the call started. All right, well, this is Steve Cook. I am with Lifeonaire, and today we are going to be addressing one of our Lifeonaire principles. One of the things that I want to do with these calls or these videos is to be able to address the principles that we teach through Lifeonaire, but sort of how do we apply them to our daily lives, and where does the background for some of that come from? Last month was the first time that I ever did one of these videos, and I appreciate all the feedback that we got. And one of the things that we had been told was I needed to look at the screen more, and I get that. I understand it. It was only about 15 or 20 minutes before we did the last call that we made the decision that I was going to actually do a video. And so for those of you who are here and participating in this, know that I actually take quite a bit of time to prepare for these calls. And I usually do a write-up, and I have a long outline of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And so in preparation for that last one, I really had this write-up, and typically I'm on the phone and I can read my notes while I'm going through them. So today I decided, I had my write-up, and I'm going to do my best to memorize that and just go with it rather than looking at my notes. In fact, I don't even have my notes in front of me today. So we're going to address this from a different perspective. Give me one moment to get my call going. There is a little more of a challenge for me here now as I'm doing more than one thing. I have to record my call, I have to dial into the call, and I have to be on Facebook. Okay, so I want to go ahead and first I want to apologize to all of you who are on the telephone line. I have been getting everything started, and I am working this from the Facebook angle as well, and I just simply forgot to dial in. So I am with you all right now, and thanks for joining me. So we are doing a video and we are doing a call. So today's topic is going to be one of our Lifeonaire principles. It's going to be on the freedom. And one of the things that so many of us desire is freedom. And I'm going to go out on a limb that as I sit here and I talk about freedom, that the majority of people are going to immediately default to financial freedom. That's going to be the one thing that you start thinking about when you think about Lifeonaire and freedom. But then there's going to be another thing, that other thing that tends to be very popular in the Lifeonaire circles is freedom with our time. Being able to spend our time the way that we desire to spend it, not having somebody telling us where we need to be, how long we have to be there, but instead where we have the freedom to come and go as we please and to live life on the terms that we want to live life on. I'm not going to address either one of those today. In fact, I'm going to take this somewhere completely different. And this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, even for me. And I'll just tell you, in my preparation for it, I was trying to write an article. And I have an article that's written, but I'm not too happy with where the article is yet, and I figured it was going to be better for me to just sort of talk through this and to teach it from this perspective, because there are so many different angles that we can approach this from. But the area that I want to talk about today is freedom within our minds. I think that many people live in a prison in their own mind. We have all kinds of reasons why we live in this prison where we rob ourselves of freedom because of the way that we respond to different things that happen in our lives, the different circumstances that we may deal with, conflicts that we have with people. And so I wanted to just go ahead and take the time to address this issue. And I firmly believe that if we can go ahead and begin to even find freedom in this particular area of our lives, that many of the other things will come together. I mean, if I have financial freedom and I have freedom with my time, but I don't have freedom in my mind, I'm still going to struggle. I'm going to struggle an awful lot. And so I want you to just begin to think about this for a moment and help just go with me to this place where you probably have found yourself at some point or another in your life where your thoughts are just completely consumed with things that are going on in your life. Sometimes it might just be worry. You might be worried about finances. You might be worried about a relationship. You might be worried about health situations. Mothers worry about their children all the time and what their children's future is going to look like. But other times we have things like there's conflicts in our lives. We have a conflict with a person or a coworker or a relative or a spouse. And that conflict that we sit here and we wrestle with in our mind, we can sit here, we could have fights and arguments in our mind. We could, we always win those. When it's in our mind, we're winning those fights. And so maybe that's why we like to be there, because we can sit there and just engage in that battle and we can win that fight. But we take that in and then we hold on to bitterness and we have unforgiveness. Sometimes there's people who are trying to take something from us, or maybe there's the threat of a lawsuit, and you've worked really hard and you've all your life and you've built up some substantial assets and you've got a lot to lose, and now somebody's threatening to take that away from you. There could be other things that we struggle with in our mind. Sometimes people are going to struggle with lust, and that's a big thing for a lot of people, and they just sit there and they dwell in that place where this is something that's all consuming. They don't like it, but they go there and they struggle with it, and they wish that they didn't do it, but they do, and they just have this battle that's going on back and forward, and they don't know what to do with it. They wish it would go away, and but we end up with this prison then in our minds where this thing is just captivating us. It holds on to us. It doesn't allow us to be who we were created to be. When we find ourselves in that place, here's one of the challenges that we end up with. We can't be authentic about who we are. And if we are authentic about who we are, then we'd have to tell people the thoughts that are on our mind. I know that there have been times I've sat in my church and they said, how would you like for the thoughts that are growing through your mind to be scrolling across the wall or across the screen so that everybody in here knew what you were thinking? And I got to tell you, there are times when that's the last thing in the world that I want anybody to know are the thoughts that I'm having, because, our mind, that battlefield within our mind can be a very wicked thing. And we certainly don't want people to know exactly what's going on in our head, what's going on in our mind, because it's usually not the person who we want to portray ourselves to be. And so, but where does that all come from? Where does it start? How do we end up in that place where we end up struggling with that? And this was a discussion I was having with a group of guys last week, and without going into too many details, one of the people is being sued, and the threat is pretty large. I'm going to go so far as to say that from everything I know about it, it's a wrongful case. It's a frivolous case. The person shouldn't even have to be dealing with this, but the fact of the matter is the world that we live in, they have to. And this is a person who just does so much good, and they do so much for so many people, and they've done very, very well with their career, and they've built a good life, and he's got a great family, yet this thing is consuming, and they're constantly faced with day-to-day. It's put in their face. They can worry about it. They can lose sleep over it. It can affect their relationships. There's a whole lot that's tied to this. And in my discussion with him, I just sat there and it just occurred to me, and I brought up and I said, you know, the problem is not so much what this person is doing, but the reason that you're struggling with it is because of a fear of loss. And this fear of loss that we have is what makes us angry. This fear of loss that we have are the things that make us, you know, all consumed with it, where we have those battles within our mind. We sit here and we start thinking about the worst case scenarios and how we could lose everything and our lives will be ruined, and how am I going to provide for my family, and I worked so hard, how dare this person take this away from my family. And then you can even start to have thoughts of, you know, wishing ill on the person who is threatening you. And so we have all of these kinds of things that begin to take place and that go on our mind. But when I sat here and I pointed out, I said, what if you just got rid of that fear of loss? What if you didn't care? What if, you know, you could really look at this from the perspective, you know, I built all of this up. I worked hard for all this. I've been extremely blessed. And, you know, if I lose it, I lose it. I know how to do it all over again. Or what if you say, I don't care about what other people think about me. The only thing I care about is, what does God think about me? He knows the truth. And if I have done right in this situation and I have acted the way that he would expect me to act, do I really care what other people think? But see, when we have this fear of losing our reputation or fear of losing our status within a group of people or within the community, these things really bother us. And so I think that most of the battlefield of the mind that we struggle with has mostly to do with our fear of loss. Our fear of loss of love, our fear of loss of status, our fear of loss of possessions, our fear of loss of just about anything that you can think of. And we sit here and we turn this into a worry that is so exceedingly great that most of the time, if we could just sit back and be reasonable and look at the things that we worry about, there is little to no chance of most of that stuff ever happening. Is it possible? Sure. That we could see the worst case happening in just about anything that we ever experience, but it hardly ever happens. And then even when we do tackle and really can come up with what is the worst case, it's usually not all that bad. We probably have experienced worse than that at some point or another in our lives, and we overcame, yet we have such a fear of experiencing something bad or fear of loss or this fear of pain that we put ourselves into a prison in our minds. And when we're in that prison, the biggest thing then is we lack that authenticity. We don't want people to really know who we are, what we're struggling with. We don't want people to know that we could be filled with hate, that we have this bitterness, that we fear losing because that might make us look greedy or envious or coveting the stuff that we have. And so we tend to just go into this battlefield within our mind. And I think that we so desire to have freedom from that. We want to be released from that and to not do battle there. And this is where, oftentimes people say within, the Lifeonaire community, particularly within our coaching groups, that, I'm sorry, I got somebody who's speaking in the background here on my phone. But one of the things that we experience within the Lifeonaire community is that people will say that, hey, within Lifeonaire, I can let people know what's really going on in my life. They can know the worst about me, and it's still okay. They still love me. They still come alongside of me, and they help me to rise above and to be better. And we have created an authentic community where people can do that. And I'm so proud of that because we have seen people flourish within that. They are not holding on to some of these things. They're able to just let go and to be open amongst a group of people, and the freedom that they can experience once they share something that is something that scared them to death to ever be able to share it before. There are things that people are not proud of that they need to share, and they once they can get it out within the group and put it out there in the light where everybody can see it instead of it hiding just in their mind, they're able to work through it. They're able to free themselves. We have had people sit right there in the middle of a group of people and confess to having extramarital affairs on their spouse. And that was what they needed to do, to have people come alongside of them to help them through that, to take them through the next level. And in those particular instances, we've seen a beautiful transition where those marriages have been restored. We've had people who have confessed to their greed and how they've cheated people because of how much money they just wanted, and they just had this grip. And meanwhile, they feel guilty about it all the time, but they've got that drive that keeps on driving them, so they do it over and over and over again. But once they were able to get it out and let people know that, hey, I'm struggling with this, they were able to begin to start that healing process. But when they were trying to deal with it themselves, they really struggled with it. We've had other people who have confessed to their pornography addictions in front of a room, that once they did that, that was this first step toward it and being able to overcome it. And in fact, years and years and years of having that problem and that addiction, once they were able to confess it in front of people and it be okay. Not that it was okay to continue to do it, but the people who were in there, they could be authentic with them, and the people would sympathize with them and love them and have compassion for them and come alongside of them and say, look, let's help you to get out of this. And it gave them everything that they needed, that in spite of what they struggled with, that I never want anybody to know this about me because I'm a terrible person because of it. And then they could come on out, they could come clean, they could tell others about it, and the people still loved them. It freed them from that prison that they had created in their own mind, and they were able to begin to start taking those steps. Until they were able to speak about these things in their lives, they just wrestled with it, they battled with it, and in an attempt to try to hide it, not let anybody else know what was going on, they lived with it, and they continued to live in it. And so by being able to come out into the light, to share with others what their struggles were, they were able to begin to achieve that freedom that they so desired to have. And then that freedom helped them out with their relationships. Their relationships grew stronger. Their relationships were better as a result of being able to let go and walk away from that prison that's in our own mind, and stop being consumed by those debilitating thoughts that we could have on a regular basis. And so I want to just share with you some practical things on how this is maybe done, because it's certainly a whole lot easier. And this is what I was struggling with, actually putting this into words for an article. How can we overcome this? First, if we're going to come out and we want to tell other people or have other people come alongside of us so that we can be authentic with it, we have to trust those people. We have to trust that when we share and when we're vulnerable with people, that they're not going to misuse it against us. I can't sit here and tell you right now that people won't misuse it against you. I've had two people who I've trusted dearly, who I shared out of love with them. I shared with them things that I had been struggling with in hopes to help them, only to see them go ahead and use that against me. It will happen. I'm telling you right now, it will happen. So how can I respond to that? I can respond by saying, that's it, I'm never going to do it again, and just building a bigger prison in my mind. Or I can just say, you know what, I feel sorry for that person. I feel sorry that that person was so small, that their struggles are great too, but they had to use mine against me. But I hope that what I shared with them will plant the seed, and that they'll be able to overcome themselves at some point or another. But in the meantime, I am going to continue to release myself from this prison. And I'm going to use the things that I have struggles with, not only to help others, but in helping others, it's going to free me. And so there is risk with it. There's no question about it. But I want you to understand that even in the midst of that risk, there's good that can come out of it. It might be painful, it might hurt, but don't let that be a good reason to not do it. I also want to encourage for all of you who are married, that the person I think that we most desire to have this kind of authenticity with is our spouse. Sometimes it's easier to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do that with other people in the midst of other people, but our spouse is usually the person who we most desire to have that authentic relationship with. And in order to accomplish that, you have to create a safe place for your spouse to be able to talk. I've had just the other night, I sat here and I had told my wife she was struggling with something, and I just told her, I said, listen, right now, I don't want you. And it just so happens I'm in the midst of preparing for this, and I'm writing this article, and I told her, I said, I don't want you creating a prison in your mind. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now that no matter what it is, whatever it is you're struggling with, you've got a free pass. I want you, I prefer that you talk to me about it than hold back. I want you to free yourself and to be able to release whatever it is that's going on in your mind. And I will sit here and I will be as understanding as I can possibly be, because I don't want you to build walls. I don't want you to build a prison in your mind holding on to this. So, please, I want to give you that opportunity to let go and say, what it is that you're struggling with. And, sometimes those struggles could be really, really big. They could be things that you just never want to talk about. Maybe you've had indiscretions that you don't want to share. But I'm going to tell you to humble yourselves. And if you will approach this with humility, it's going to produce far better results than if you approach it with pride. If you're filled with pride and you're passing blame for the reasons why you struggle, or the reasons why you have indiscretions, or the reasons why you're having a hard time with forgiveness, or the reasons why you struggle with lust, and you say that it's somebody else's fault, that's not going to go over too well. We have to be people who take responsibility. And if you're going to take responsibility for why you're struggling and where you're at, and in humility want help from the other person to be able to overcome, because you desire to be a better person, the response that you receive is going to be far greater than if you approach it with pride and are passing blame. So I want to begin to encourage that. But in order to be able to free ourselves from this prison, we need to be able to get stuff out, and we need to be able to handle it the right way. Now, most of you know that for me, I'm going to turn to my Bible, and because right here is where I believe truth is, and I believe it's the guidebook to life, and that in this I'm going to be able to learn how to handle all different kinds of circumstances, everything that I could possibly encounter in life. I believe that the answers on how to live it is here, and I look at this as truth. This is what I use to guide me, and the principles that we share in Lifeonaire can be supported through what I read in this book. But I'm going to go ahead. I just want to share just 3 different scriptures with you here today, and these 3 different scriptures, somehow or another, they're going to relate to what I'm talking about here today. One of them is Philippians 4, 6, and 7. It's, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So many of the things that we battle with in our minds, that we use to create that prison, are things that we're anxious about, and we're worried about, some outcome that might never happen. But when we can sit there and realize that God is in control of all things, and that everything I have has been given to me by God, and He also has the right to take it away, it gives me the opportunity to be able to sort of let go and to say, you know what, I'm not going to worry. Lord, I'm going to give this situation over to you. You want the best for me. And being able to let go of that, trusting Him with it, will give you a peace. But when we sit here and we don't want to let go of it, we want to keep it in our mind, and we want to figure it out, and we want to come up with the solutions. Sometimes it's our own doing that got us into that situation in the first place. We might just have to take a step back, humble ourselves, and say, I don't know what to do with this situation. God, I'm turning it over to you. I'm just asking you to help me in the midst of this. Another one here is, who of you by worrying could add a single hour to his life? We sit here sometimes in our mind and we worry. My wife worries. She worries all the time. And she worries about my kids. She worries about their future. She has this tremendous ability to find something to worry about, and I love her dearly. But this is the one thing that I always have to try to help her with, is to live more for today. Worrying isn't going to do anything. It's not going to add to our lives. It's not going to make things better. Worrying oftentimes is dealing with a fear of something that's not likely to happen or may never happen. We worry about a future event that hasn't taken place. And all too often, that future event is something that just doesn't happen. In fact, I can say that for my wife, most of the time, her worries they never happen. Most of the things that she worries about have never come to fruition. I remember sitting in one of our retreats one day, and I get it, mothers are this way, but we had a mother who was sitting in the room, and she just told us about how she worried all the time. And I knew that she had older children. In fact, some of her children were already adults and living on their own. And I had asked her, I said, so what is it that you worry about all the time? And she had a teenager still in the home. And she said, well, I worry about being able to feed my kids. And so I asked her, I said, well, how old is your oldest? And she said, well, my oldest is 25 years old. I said, so I want you right now to just think for a moment, how long have you been worrying about your 25-year-old, whether or not you're going to be able to feed them? She said, 25 years I've been worrying about that. I said, how many meals has your 25-year-old missed in the last 25 years? She said, not one. And I said, so when are you going to stop worrying about it? Because it's not going, this isn't something that's going to happen. But you have spent so much energy and time worrying about this event that never has taken place. And even now, as you can look back, and this has never happened, you still worry about it. We need to be able to let go of those kinds of things. We need to just say, that's it, I'm done with worrying. I'm not going to worry about these kinds of things that are not likely to happen. Instead, I'm going to focus, putting that same energy that I would normally use for worrying, I'm going to put that exact same energy toward living and experiencing my life. I'm going to focus that on positive things. I'm going to do things instead of remaining in this battlefield in my mind, this prison that I'm creating in my mind. And so, I just want to free myself from it. But, God says, let go of those things. Turn it over to Him. And then finally here, I want to just read this. This is from 2 Corinthians 10, 5. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. You see, the thoughts that we have in our mind, we do have control over them. And those thoughts are things that are building that prison in our mind, block by block by block. We're building up this wall, and this wall can just get higher and higher and higher the longer we're willing to dwell with those thoughts. And we need to be the ones who are willing to just go ahead and just say, you know what, I'm going to let go of this. I got to take this thought captive. I got to substitute it with something positive. I'm not going to worry about how am I going to feed my kids. Instead, I'm going to praise God and celebrate the fact that I've never had a problem with that. He has always provided for us. Or I can't sit here and dwell and allow my mind to dwell in lustful thoughts, but instead I need to take those thoughts captive and say, you know what, Lord, I am so thankful for the wife that you have blessed me with. And I am thankful for, who she is, and that you have given me this gift. And I'm thankful for the family that you've given to me. We do have a responsibility in the midst of all of this. We live in a world that is constantly bombarding us with thoughts of envy and greed and unforgiveness and bitterness, fear of loss, hatred toward people. That this is a constant battle that we are always going to be a part of, but we have to do our part in it. This passage from Corinthians does say that we have to take our thoughts captive. God's not going to take them captive for us. We have to play our part in it. But if we do take them captive and we give our thoughts over to Him, He will help us to release ourselves from that prison that's in our mind. And so I want to just encourage all of you with this, that one of the areas that many people struggle with when it comes to freedom is that battlefield in our mind. And being able to bring things out into the light meaning letting other people know about it, letting people know that of our struggles. And we need to do that with humility. If we do that filled with pride and arrogance, it's not going to be received well. But if in humility we'll come to people and we can sort of lay down our pride, lay down just ourselves and say, I've fallen, I'm struggling, I need help, will you please help me? People are usually willing to come alongside of you. And for those of you who have any concerns about that, here's one thing that I want to share with you. I want you to think, let's try and think of a real life example. We have in sports, in baseball, I'm going to use in particular, we had this whole controversy some years back. Gosh, this might be at least 10 years ago now, where we had, professional baseball players who are now being accused of using steroids, and they're breaking records and everything. And, they're in denial. They're saying, no, I didn't use steroids, and I didn't do it. And, I'm being wrongly accused. Meanwhile, we can sit there and we can see pictures of these guys from being pretty scrawny to all of a sudden hulking up and being really big. And can that happen naturally? Sure, it can happen naturally. But then when there are other people who are sitting there saying, hey, I did it with him. Hey, I watched him and I witnessed him doing it. And, I saw that with my own eyes, I watched them doing it. And then they just remain in denial. And then they don't say, they just keep on trying to defend themselves. And their pride is what's getting in the way. I don't think anybody looks up to those people. In fact, I don't. The people who I ended up respecting were the ones who came out and said, yes, I did it. I fell, and I did not do well in this area. Will you please forgive me? And those are the ones who people ended up respecting. When the person who is caught doing something that they're not supposed to do, and they're the ones who come on out, and they are the ones who come clean, and they're the ones who tell you about their struggles and what they have done, and they humbly come out there, that person is looked up to. But when they hide it, and then it gets uncovered by somebody else, well, then there's shame, and there's guilt, and they're, in that denial, and you say, no, I didn't do this, yet the evidence is stacked against you, you look bad. And so sometimes, and you have to be careful with this, because you don't want to be bringing things out into the light in hopes that people look at you and say, oh, he's such a good guy, I respect him. No, you have to do it with humility. But I just share that with you as an encouragement that at the end of the day, when you go through this process, there may be pain with it, but at the end of the day, when you can bring things to the light and do that yourself, there's freedom in that. And you can begin to free yourself from holding on to that stuff in your mind and so scared that somebody might find out about who you really are or what's going on in your mind. Let's see, where else? So the authenticity, bringing it out into the light. And, I'm just going to say, do it God's way. God says, give it up to him. Let go of it. Each day is a new day. If you're going to continue to live in the past and live with the things that you have done, you're never going to be able to move forward. And with Lifeonaire, we're all about experiencing an abundant life. If we're putting ourselves into a prison, we can't experience abundance. We need to begin to tear those walls down, let go of it, and seek help in overcoming in those areas. Again, these things can be many different things, whether it's somebody who's hurt us and we have unforgiveness and bitterness toward them, whether it is just the battlefield in our mind, whether it is greed, whether it is envy. There's all kinds of things that we struggle with, and all of these things, we are the ones who need to begin to take those thoughts captive, give them over to God, confess those to people, and ask them to come alongside of us and help us. And so, again, today, I want to just talk about one of the Lifeonaire principles, but certainly from a different angle than what we talk about it from at our events. Normally at our events, when we're talking about freedom, we talk about financial freedom, we talk about freedom with our time. Today, I really want to address talking about freedom in our mind and how we struggle with that and how to free ourselves from it. I hope that what I shared with you today is something that is worthwhile, something that's beneficial to you, as I didn't use my notes or anything today, so I really hope that I covered everything that I had desired to cover. but I certainly hope that I planted some seeds that will help you, or maybe help you to deal with some of the things that you might be challenged with. Typically, when I do this on the teleseminar, I do take questions from people, and I will let everybody on the teleseminar side of things know that I'm available for your questions, and I'm going to even try to open it up to the Facebook Live group today. If you want to type in questions, I will go ahead and I will read those out loud, and we can try to address those. But so whether you have comments or questions, I am open to hear from you right now. And I just thank everybody who did come and join us today. Thank you all for being here. So I'll just open it up right now if anybody has any comments or questions. We have a quiet group of people. And I'm not even sure that if you write in the comment section, if there's a question there that I can take. Hey Russ, how are you? Long time no see. Yeah. What's going on? So for those of you who are on the Facebook Live, Russ from Milwaukee is on the line with us here, and he had just brought up about a book that he had been reading called The 5-Second Rule, and how he has been trying to live that and apply it. Russ, specifically, what is she talking about with the 5-second rule? What is it that she is encouraging? And but before you answer that, I'm gonna try something different here. I'm gonna try to put this on speakerphone now so that perhaps the Facebook Live group can hear. Rachel, I know that you're on Facebook Live. If there are any issues with it, please let me know if I'm getting feedback or anything. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, yeah, basically when I start to thinking or obsessing or worrying about anything that I have really no control over, which I think that's what worry is projecting things that absolutely we can't do anything about. It talks in the book about counting from 5 back to 1, like when they send a rocket off, it's always backwards. They never count 1 to 5 and go off. So I do the count back from 5, I yell blast off, and then I change the way I'm thinking to something different. And it's been making wonderful, wonderful differences in my life.
So that sounds like 2 Corinthians 10:5, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And rather than allowing those thoughts to take us captive or dwelling further on those thoughts, you are making a conscious effort to take your thoughts captive and to, like, did you say blast off? And so you're letting go of it.
Yeah, I say blast off just because it makes me smile when I do it.
Awesome. Well, and that's good. And so basically you're doing exactly what I feel biblically we're commanded to do, and that's to just take those thoughts captive and to let them go.
Yeah, and it's the hardest part of it is identifying when we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can get down a rabbit hole in a big hurry without really knowing that that's what we're doing, and then all of a sudden we're there, and we've lost all the serenity and peace that we could possibly have, and don't even know how we got there. So, it takes a lot of practice. but it is definitely worthwhile.
I completely agree with you in that regard. And, I think that once you start to recognize it, it doesn't take long to realize you're going down that path, but sometimes even entertaining some thoughts or things for even 30 seconds or a minute was too long. But the more that we practice it and the more we practice letting go, the better we get at it. Thank you, Russ. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Anybody on Facebook Live? All right, well, if we don't have anything else, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get this one wrapped up. Again, from Lifeonaire, I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us today. Hopefully, we're going to continue to hear from you. We'll try to put these up in our articles or blog section on our website. We're constantly coming out with new material. We're at that point now where so many of the things that we have been working on are starting to come together. So keep visiting us. You'll continue to see new materials coming out, new content coming out. Our goal is to help you to live and experience an abundant life, and join us. We're on this journey together, and we want to help you. So thanks for joining me today, everybody. Have a great day.